This is the one day of the year when the city of Compiègne, about 50 miles north of Paris, throws its gates open to that most famous cycling classic of them all. Hi everyone, I'm Phil Liggett and welcome to the 89th running of the Paris-Roubaix, a race that takes us back to 1896 when it first started at Port-Maillot, right in the heart of Paris, and these days starts here, something like 50 miles north of the city. The Paris-Roubaix goes up to the Pas de Calais, the department where all the cobblestones lurk, the cobblestones that have made this race famous, the Hell of the North. You know, it's only paused for 2 world wars, and those 2 world wars, strangely enough, have even added to the character of this race because the roads left behind were untidy and broken, just like they were in the days of Napoleon's armies and right back to Roman times. These days, you know, there are only around 50 miles of these roads left in the department of the Pas de Calais, and the department is working alongside the organisation to try and preserve those roads forever, so that each year in April we can go back in time, almost to the way it was back in 1896. Well, if you were watching with us last year on the FCV video, then you know that it was a great battle between Eddie Plankett of Belgium and the Canadian Steve Bauer. A year ago, you couldn't have been closer. Was it a millimetre? Was it a centimetre? Well, I guess that depends who you speak to, but it was certainly close. Well, both riders are back. Both riders could continue that duel today. One man who will try to stop them, Edwig van Hooijdonk, recent winner of the Tour de Flanders, which he's now won twice as a professional. He's also won that race once as an amateur. He loves Paris-Roubaix, twice third and once fifth in this race, but yet to be the winner. Laurent Fignon, the great Frenchman, double winner of the Tour de France in the early 80s. Well, he's as likely to win this race as lose it by a long way. You never know with Laurent quite what he's going to do. But Barney Rees on his team has rumoured that he thinks Laurent Fignon will do a good one today. And Marc Madiot, the last French winner of this event back in 1985. Before that it was Bernard Hinault in 1981. And then you have to go back to 1956 when Louis Mbobé was the winner. The French haven't enjoyed a great deal of success in their own race. The shock absorbers here, special forks fitted to the bike of former world champion Greg LeMond, the great innovator in world cycling. Never afraid to try out something fresh and hoping for a more comfortable ride on the cobblestones today. And Rudy Dahlmans, the world champion last year and now riding in the rainbow jersey. The one man everybody looking out for, of course, is Steve Bauer. The question is he feeling ready for the race?
I feel pretty good this morning. We'll have to see what I feel like after 200 and some odd kilometers. That's what's more important.
You've been smiling all week, Steve. I've got a feeling you're a pretty confident guy.
Well, I'm confident, but you know, Paris-Roubaix, you can be good and you can be in front, and then your chances can be wiped away by a crash or punctures just at the wrong time. So you know, it's a bit of a luck too to get to the final, but right now I'm feeling good.
266.5 kilometres, and the riders on the start line. They're facing, in fact, 38.7 kilometres in the final section of Paris-Roubaix. That's between Valenciennes and Roubaix, where all the bad cobblestones are. There's also plenty to keep them amused between Troisville and Valenciennes. Troisville is the noted town, the first section of cobblestones, zone 22. But we will join the action now as the field have entered the famed forest of Arenberg, where the cobblestones are brutes, and there is a small breakaway of 11 riders, but they are being caught by the main field. These 11 riders now, they had a lead of 5 minutes and 15 seconds, but the chase is on. Gert Jacobs, Gerrit Zollefeld, Hans Kinberg of Sweden, the new Toshiba rider, Ludo de Koning, Johan Capio, Bruno Gwens, Erwin Nijboer, Thomas Wegmuller, the most noted of this breakaway, Etienne de Wilde, the sprinter, Yuri Manulov of the Soviet Union, and Adri Kours. That's the makeup. No French riders in this leading group at all, and that is something of a surprise. And just look at the enormous crowd here waiting in the forest. This is now a fine piece of protected woodland, where normally the call of the chiff-chaff can be heard for miles. Today it's only the clatter of the machinery over the cobblestones that have laid here for years and years. Steve Bauer, training down this road last week, said that he felt the forest was a little bit smoother this year because although the crowd's obscuring it now, they have levelled out the sides of the road, and the riders consequently searching for the gutters as they make the way. This is the leading group, but the main field are already on the cobblestones not too far behind them and trying to bring them back. Gert Jacobs leading the charge across the cobblestones from the front breakaway. They're being chased originally by Luigi Birelli of the Del Tongo team, Remo Rossi of Carrera and Rolf Alder of Helvetia. And Greg LeMond is chasing off the back of this group, in fact, with Laurent Fignon. That's the report. They've both had a problem as they've come onto the cobblestones, both with flat tyres. And the crowd seeing the first point where they think decisions can be taken in this year's Paris-Roubaix here in the forest. 158 kilometres covered. And as almost traditionally, the early the early breakaway rather, has gone after 50 kilometres. They're bringing it back now. It's not so long ago, though, when they made a big mistake back in 1988, when the early breakaway survived to the end and Derek de Mol outsprinted Thomas Wegmuller, who had that plastic bag covering his gears, and that spoiled his sprint. And that was probably the most recent of the big surprises in Paris-Roubaix. It's very rare indeed that one of the best riders doesn't win this event. And there's the smooth path which the riders have found this year. Most of the teams, of course, coming here in team formation and riding, and now they want the side of the road and the crowd are having to jump for it. I think this is half of the reason the crowd comes, to enjoy the full feeling of Paris-Roubaix. Just look at these pictures now. And the leading break almost caught. There's about 30 seconds in it now, with the advance party of the main field coming down. Well, this morning at the start, it was a very tense Eddie Plankett, last year's winner. He didn't want to be interviewed on the line. Always a good sign that he wants to put up a fine defence of what was a great victory last year by that millimetre over Steve Bauer. Bauer too, all week, has been trying to engender in himself the confidence to win this race, because he has yet to find the top form that brought him into a very close second place last year. But there was indication in midweek races that Bauer was returning to good form. He wants to do the ride too, of course, for his new Motorola team. Just look at the way they're tapping out the rhythm over these cobblestones. Our cameras really aren't showing you close enough just how bad the cobbles are. But it's all over now as the leading group swings away from the Forest of Arlenberg. There now you can see the field has regrouped at the front as we head off towards zone number 8. This is the zone which starts at Bercé and takes us through to Marigny. And between 214 and 216 kilometres this stretch of cobblestones. 22 stretches, and they number from number 22 at Troisville, which is on the very pleasantly named Rue de la Sucrerie, and it goes through to zone number 1, which comes just before the finishing line in Roubaix. This is Alan Piper at the back of the group here in the tulip colours, a man who enjoys what really is a very typically Belgian type race in France, because there's lots of races still in Belgium that are sent over the cobblestones. And look at the way Piper is dancing here, trying to grab on. This is the group which is trying to reform at the front now. There's Edwig van Hooijdonk wearing his long black tights, which he rode to victory in only a week ago in the Tour of Flanders, and that was a magnificent piece of riding. He broke away on the Bosberg and he literally ripped away from the breakaway, and he finished alone down at the finish in Flanders. And they called him the next morning the boss of the Berg. Berg, by the way, means small hill in Flemish. Well, a hand up there from Alan Piper. I'm just wondering if in fact Piper may have a front wheel puncture. So that leading breakaway caught, having had 5 minutes 15 seconds. So clearly the race taking no chances today. They normally allow it a bit longer before they sweep it up. But if you remember last year when you were watching with us, it was Eddie Plankett who broke away in the Forest of Arlenberg. All my Belgian co-commentators said he'd gone crazy, and in fact he won the race. Franco Ballerini joining at the back of this group now. The proximity of the breakaways, they are not moving far away from the field. Ballerini here, who came to the fore last year with one of his best victories, came in the Grand Prix of America in Montreal in those terrible conditions. He's number 111 for the Del Tongo team. The Italians trying to continue the great renaissance they experienced last year, and starting off with a bang this year in Milan-San Remo when Claudio Chiappucci rode away. And all of the classics so far, well, all of them, just the 2 classics we've had so far, have been won by national riders with lone breakaways. Van Hooijdonk last week in the Tour of Flanders. Well, my helicopter now tracking the field here. This a very, very nasty corner. Here's Laurent Fignon. He's having to fight back now. He's in the second or third group. He hasn't really recovered from the flat tyre. And just on his wheel there was Stefan Yoho. Now looking down at this leading group here, it looks to me as though we've got Eddie Plankett trying to go away again at the front of this group. No real indication that Plankett again has the form for Paris-Roubaix, but Steve Bauer told me in the week, he says, I just hope that it's the fact that it is Paris-Roubaix that gives me the feeling that I can do well in it. He said, I know everybody will be looking at me, and I've got the form coming. I'm hoping the extra 20% I require will come from the enthusiasm of the fact that it is Paris-Roubaix, but I usually ride well. Let's hope so. And the return of Laurent Fignon, and going very, very well indeed. Philippe Louviot, champion of France, taking on some food, and sitting here just behind is Thierry Marie. No, it's not, it's Frédéric Moncassin, the sprinter in the Castorama team. This is the second group at the moment we're looking at here. There's the leaders, 3, 6, 7 riders in that front group. Alan Piper you can readily pick out. Carlo Bowman's in the centre just ahead of Piper. There's Piper, Edwig Van Hooijdonk. The riders will not like the fact that Van Hooijdonk is stirring the pace quite so early, especially with Ballerini in this group, because Ballerini is a dangerous rider. The Italians looking now for a replacement here in Paris-Roubaix for the Italian Francesco Moser, who won it 3 times in a row, and there's Plankett, stalking down the outside. Again, he seems to have read this race right. You've got to ride Paris-Roubaix from the front. You can't risk being anywhere near the back once you've got to Troisville, where the cobblestones begin. Too many things happen which are outside of your control. Riders fall in front of you, you puncture, your bike drops to bits, and you want to at least be in a position at the front to recover from such situations. And Plankett has read it right again. Tremendous attitude, this Belgian sprinter. The Paris-Roubaix, of course, totally flat, and it would be no classic at all, quite frankly, without these cobblestones. And the organisation are hoping that they will be secure right into the year 2000. Reminds me of the famous Grand National horse race in Britain. If you stay up in the saddle, you have a real chance of winning the race. The only trouble is most of them fall off in the Grand National, and that's the way it is in Paris-Roubaix. So this breakaway trying now to consolidate itself, but they've got no lead at all over the main field behind. Jean-Claude Colotti, Ballerini, Carlo Bowmans, and the rider looking at here, Marshall Gaillon, and just taking over from Gaillon, we've got Philippe Casado. There's a great deal of consternation too in the field behind that Edwig Van Hooijdonk is in this breakaway. He seems to love this event. He came to this event, first rode it in 1985 when he turned professional. Everybody was talking about him. There he is, and he finished 5th with a late chase after the leaders. And since then he's always ridden well in his early season classic races. The Tour de Flanders is undoubtedly his event. He's become the Lion of Flanders, no question about that. But he always seems to continue his form into the Paris-Roubaix. Event which started back down in 1896. We're going on to cobble zone number 7 here. So this is Seclin. Takes us through for 3.5 kilometers to the Petit Ennetier. The leaders here have just about a minute over the front portion of the main field. Greg LeMond, as far as we can ascertain at this minute, is in the 3rd group chasing, but not very far behind the 2nd group. This is the chase group here. Number 11, Steve Bauer, sitting at the back, so Bauer still monitoring affairs. There's Bauer. Adrie van der Poel alongside him. There's still a lot of riders here in a great position to springboard forward to that group. There's the details on zone number 7. It begins at kilometre 219, finishes at 222, 3.5 kilometres of cobblestones. And all of these cobblestone sections now running us right down into Roubaix really are vicious. The crowd, of course, have a complete map of this route, and with the good maps you can zigzag across the fields on different tracks, and you can actually keep on seeing this race. You can actually follow the race for possibly 4 or 5 occasions before you want to rush off towards Roubaix to see the finish. And some of the people don't even want to see the finish, they can see that on television. They want to see the riders battered to death out here on the cobblestones. Special equipment today, in many ways, the mechanics tend to build the wheels slightly looser because they want more flexibility in them to take the shock on the cobbles. Tyres aren't as hard as they would normally be, but not too soft that they will form punctures by banging the wheel on the tyre. 2 rolls of handlebar tapes at least to try and stop the blisters forming on the hands, which comes after about 5 hours into the race. And this little group here is still making ground. And there's Van Hooijdonk, looking as though he's struggling a little bit at the back of the field here. Alan Piper still riding well too. The Australian who really deserves some success. He switched teams this year from Panasonic. He's come across to Tulip Computers alongside Adrie van der Poel. A brief visit there we paid to the main autoroute between Paris and Brussels, but we've gone over the top in what must be one of the narrowest roads, I think, in this area. And there's Adrie van der Poel now trying to get up on terms. Peter de Klerk, another rider grossly underrated who can turn in some excellent results when he puts his mind to it. This is the chase group we're looking at now, and they're very, very close to pulling back that lead group. "25 seconds, so they're bringing them back. 25 seconds is nothing on Paris-Roubaix, providing you don't have any troubles. A lot of people are a bit disappointed today that we haven't got rain and very wet roads, but we've had an unusual early spring in Europe, and the weather has been most pleasant, and the roads are extremely dry indeed. And this is leading to different types of problems. One is the riders constantly being covered in dust, which is going in their mouths and up their nostrils and everywhere. It's giving some riders the problem of the mouth is drying out, and they're not being able to eat properly because they simply can't swallow the food. And you see, when the cars come forward, as you see now, because they're caught in between the 2 groups, they've been absolutely caught out here. The 2 groups are merging. The car would dearly love to be out the way and can't get anywhere, neither can the motorbikes. And this is one of the peculiar problems of Paris-Roubaix. It is very, very dangerous. I once remember a picture of Stephen Roach, who fell in Paris-Roubaix, and he was lying on the cobblestones, desperately trying to release his feet from the toe clips. And the car, with its wheels fully locked on, was within an inch of running over him when it stopped dead. It was the most unnerving experience for Stephen Roach, and it is one of the things the riders fear most, because there is no other cars can go in these narrow roads, and in fact on the very serious stretches only the actual team cars and the race official cars are allowed, and this is one of those stretches. Philippe Louvio in this group that's coming up. Henrik Redant, this big gorilla of a man from Belgium who's pile driving the pedals there. And number 35 here from the Toshiba is Laurent Jalabert, one of the most improved young professionals. He shot to the fore last year with an early yellow jersey in the Kellogg's Tour of Britain, and now he's really settling in well. Jean-Marie Wampers, previous winner, and a good defence last year. He came onto the track and just narrowly failed. He finished 5th. He got washed away in that superb sprint between Plankett and Bauer. But isn't it strange how riders who rarely excel in the other classics all year, they all feel they want to show well in Paris-Roubaix. Still de Klerk is here too. And now this is a new selection that's going on. And that looked to me as though Alan Piper has had a puncture, and that's really bad luck for Alan. He really does have some rotten luck, Alan Piper. Bauer is here though. Bauer, I think too, is the only rider from Motorola who's made the decisive split. This is Steve Bauer sitting at the back. Very, very quiet rider, Steve Bauer. You never quite know what he's thinking, but he's such a determined man when he comes into the race. Silver medal in the Olympic Games in 1984 in Los Angeles, when he really thought he was on for gold, but Alexei Greywall suddenly found the strength required to win the sprint. There's Van der Poel, 2:01, and this looks like Guido Bontempi here. Yes, it was 101. This is now a group which is reforming at the front. Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle, another man who enjoys this race. He's had twice second place, and Duclos, by the way, is also riding on these forks, the same Rock Sox forks that Greg LeMond is using. Carlo Bowmans, Marc Sergeant, Eddie Plankett, Jean-Claude Calotti, Edwig van Hooijdonk. This is a superb move now, and really the riders behind are going to have to get across to it. Another stretch of cobblestones left, but you may have caught sight of a banner coming up very shortly as well. There is a series of prizes, of course, for each time the riders come over the cobblestones here. The first prize today, by the way, 150,000 French francs. That's about $23,000, making this the richest of all of the single-day classics, and so it should be, because it is a magnificent event. But it's not so long ago. We're only going back less than 10 years when the first prize was only $1,500. Sounds ridiculous now, doesn't it? Well, over the cobbles, the riders have decided to allow a regroupment at the front. And settling down a little bit here. Olaf Ludwig taking a nice look at us in the picture. So he's come up. That's a good ride by the former East German. Ludwig completing his season last year with a superb result in the Tour de France, where he got the green jersey as points. And an attack now by Jean-Claude Calotti going clear. The riders becoming very difficult to recognise now. They're wearing these hard shell helmets, which they've rebelled against, and for the moment have won the battle. They are now allowed to select which type of helmet they require, and as you can see, two riders here deciding to use the older type, the rib type, which is called affectionately, or not, as by some as the hairnet. There's Laurent Fignon. He's had a hard fight. He always seems to make it a hard day of racing in Paris-Roubaix. Found the back wheel there of the world champion Rudy Darnans, who outsprinted teammate Dirk de Wolf in Japan last year. And number 61 going through was Tom Cordes, former junior world champion and former world champion as an amateur in the team time trial. These are the top talented men in the world of cycling. There's no question about that. And the Paris-Roubaix picks them all out for you. Michel Vermotte, we just caught a glimpse to our left. Henrik Dant. And again, the train now is going because there's another split forming here. Marc Sergeant sitting at the back. Another underrated rider now reaching the end of his career. Former champion of Belgium. Panasonic completely controlled this race last year. They're not having the same luck at the moment. And Eddie Plankett still looking as though he's in with a chance here. Brother Walter's just driven by and looked at him, and Eddie grits his teeth. I don't know whether Eddie's got a problem here, but his team car has gone forward of him, and there's why he's now having, and I think, you know, the Plankett is signalling, I have a problem with the back wheel. Well, the whole group are seeing it, and it looks like a brake adjustment. Yes, all is well, and back into the action. Well, we'll go and see what damage has been done at the front. I think they're indicating two riders in the lead. They've only just gone clear. There's more than two riders though, isn't there? We got towards the leaders. Oh, there's a big sprint up here. There's a big split. Rudy Darnans has made the split. So too is Tom Cordes. And number 224 is Paul Hager-Doren. 108 will be Michel Vermotte. Is that Laurent Fignon? Yes, it is. And going very, very quickly indeed. This is Hendrik Redant also. This has been a very, very strange Paris-Roubaix because nobody has really got away. They chased down the initial first breakaway very early on today that went after 50 kilometres. They caught that by the forest of Arenberg. And now everybody is fighting here to try and read the right breakaway. A very, very difficult race indeed to read. As soon as one break goes, the field are bringing them back. And all of these little villages that are peppered around the borders of Belgium. On to the pavé zone number 6, Pont Thibault, which will take us through to N-Velin. Two little sections here. This first section, 1.4 kilometres. A little bit of smooth road to fool you, and then you've got another kilometre of bad road, all on the same zone. And the crowd, who may well have seen the race come through Arenberg, have now jumped in the cars, come down the auto route, off the auto route and dive back into the fields, and they're probably watching the race here again now. So if you think it's a huge crowd, well, it is, but very often we're seeing the same crowd who've come back up to further down the course. There's a top amateur stage race taking part today as well, over 5 days. It finishes on the velodrome at Roubaix, and it covers the same last 20 kilometres of this course, some 3 hours ahead of the professional Paris-Roubaix race. So a feast of cycling in this very, very cycling motivated area of France. Van der Poel now without his teammate Alan Piper, caught with a back wheel puncture and left behind. No, it's Guido Bontempi in the white jersey in front, Peter de Klerk here, number 82. This is the second group still on the road. Edwig van Hooijdonk still easily to pick out. Marc Sergeant is in this group to the right of our picture. And this is the confirmation, this group leading by 23 seconds. They've been caught once and it's gone clear again. Slightly different combination. Ballerini is up into this group again once more. And still Paul Hagedorn. And our French camera is dropping back a little bit, I think, to pick up the face of Laurent Fignon. Michel Vermotte. He had a terrible crash at Bordeaux where Davis Finney won a stage a couple of years ago. Finney was lucky with Malcolm Elliott to get round the falling Michel Vermotte, who hit the barriers at Bordeaux, a matter of 100 metres from the line, a very nasty fall. And Finney took full advantage, came round him and pipped Malcolm Elliott to the line. And you can hear the bouncing and banging going on as Laurent Fignon rides this. Bernard Hinault, who won this race, a very tight bend indeed. It's so difficult to get round these corners because you're bouncing off the corners, you try to get round them. And the art is you pedal big gears as big as you can and as fast as you can to try and ease the constant vibration. And all of this effort can come to nothing so quickly. A collapsed wheel, a gear dropping off or a puncture. Jean-Claude Calotti taking a drink at the front. That's Olaf Ludwig. Is it? Yes, I think it is. Marc Sergeant. Marc Sergeant at the front there. Olaf Ludwig not too far behind. And Bauer is not in this group, so he's still in that split behind, some 23 seconds. That's one of the most famous corners in Paris-Roubaix that's usually covered in big potholes and plenty of mud. But today it's not. Talking to Roger de Vlaming, the man they call the Gypsy and who holds the outright number of victories in this race, 4 victories in fact. He won in 1972, 74, 75, 77. Great man, they called him the Gypsy because of his Romany features, but he said he rode this race 13 times. He never had a problem till after the 10th time he rode it, and he said once he did have a problem and then he lost all interest in winning it again. Very lucky man. Now this actually, I feel, has almost been cut through a field. This stretch of cobblestones here is full of grass. In fact, the grass making it a little bit smooth because it's grown between all of the cobblestones, but it's put straight across a field to link the one road with the other. And the rider forcing an attack here is Hagedorn, Paul Hagedorn. And going clear, but he's throwing down the gauntlet to the rest. Now let's go back to the chasing group. Reforming at the front. And it's quite a sizable group. This Peter de Klerk is on the back from the Lotto team. Jean-Luc Van den Broek really bringing that team on now so well. And Hagedorn wouldn't be seen as a likely winner on the pre-race favourites list. But he's Paris-Roubaix, you get to the front and you keep going until something happens. That's the attitude. You never know who's going to get up alongside you because you never know who's still in the fight behind you. Guido Bontempi looking as though he might be coming back to his former greatness. A man who's won 10 stages of the Tour of Italy, 2 stages of the Tour of Spain, and stages, of course, of the Tour de France. And the year we had that team time trial in the Tour de France a couple of years ago, when Bob Roll crashed in training just before it started, the day before it started, and they called in, which was then the 7-11 team, called in Nathan Dahlberg. The team time trial then, which was called a prelude rather than a prologue because of a brief change in international rules, Guido Bontempi was the man who pulled on the first yellow jersey of the Tour. Bauer is in this group, still happily watching a first in the back. A little bit of a dangerous position, I would have thought, Steve. Not leaving a lot of room for error from the riders in front, and easy for brakes to go away that you can't control. But Bauer is a very, very experienced rider, of course. Twice a leader in the Tour de France. Finished 4th in that race as well. Winner of the championship of Zurich. But if he managed to win this, I think it will go down as Steve's finest moment. And there's Laurent Fignon still driving the train here. This is the group which is trying to contact Fignon. Is looking like he is firing today. Well, Bjarne Riis must have known something. He just smiled and he said, look to Fignon today in Paris-Roubaix. Fignon, when we asked him that question and said his teammate had said it, just smiled and walked away. Wouldn't even give us an answer. Michel Vermont. Rudy Donans, world champion, 61, sitting there at the back is Tom Cordes. And Cordes now settling in nicely as a professional. So Fignon tracing now in that group, 18 seconds back. The great Frenchman, best finish in this race, 3rd. And that coming the year he won Milan-San Remo in 1988. Alan Piper is down there, I think, in that group too. So this is the Fignon group, and still riders trying to get off the front. Just a handful of seconds. They must be able to see the leaders on this road because it's quite a straight road. More attacks flying off the front of this peloton now. You can see the lead group just ahead of us. This is Piper again, trying to get back on terms and recover from that puncture. And with him here, Johnny Tarlin, who had a good start to the season last year. He was a challenger in the World Cup till mid-season, lying 4th overall. And Jacques Hanegraaff, I think, no it isn't, it's Jean-Marie Wampers at the front for the Panasonics, and Peter de Klerk here. This is the chase group again. Jean-Claude Calotti, Henrik Redant, Carlo Bowmans, little Belgian sprinter who's becoming something of a stare too. Former Belgian champion, lost his title last year. And moved across to Claude Coquillon of Belgium. He's not here, by the way, Claude Coquillon. This is his retirement year. He's planning a double assault on the Ardennais races, the Flèche Wallonne and the Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which are next week. And the rumour is that Coquillon is out training today, and he plans to ride some 200 kilometres in preparation for next week's racing. He's chosen to stay away from Paris-Roubaix in his final year. Well, he's one of the few big names that isn't here. Another one that we sadly miss is Sean Kelly, following his crash in Paris-Nice, which he has won on no fewer than 7 previous occasions. Kelly still out with a broken collarbone. That chasing group of 5 has tried to get back onto that second group on the road, which is 20 riders maybe. These riders that we're looking at now are about all that we need consider for this year's Paris-Roubaix. There was 196 set off this morning. There were some retirements at the first feeding zone. There's usually a mass retirement at the second feed. That's where television cameras often hover to see who comes in and says, that's enough for me. There's Marc Sesjon, number 5. Van Hooijdonk in this group. This is the advanced group again now, but it's regrouping steadily and getting bigger and bigger. Riders latching on. There's 19 riders in this break here. And still somebody willing to make up the attack. And those scramble around as they try to contain it. Let's have a look down, and here's another little, this is the Piper group, I think, possibly coming across, which means that the main chase behind, containing Laurent Fignon, and here he is, can't be far off them either. So a lot of good names getting back into contention. It's been a hard chase over the zones of Pavé, though, to come back but we're now developing at this stage of the race, which is a late stage of the race, quite a useful leading group. And it's interesting to see that Rudy Darnans is also up here as well in his World Championship jersey. He's been troubled with a bit of bronchitis all winter, and he's had nothing to talk of in the way of conditions and form yet, but he said this morning he did feel a bit better. There's Fignon settling back down for a minute perhaps. Jean-Marie Wampers, great. And now they've all come together, they're wondering who's going to make the next move. And the world champion, Rudy Darnans, in there. He's a man for Paris-Roubaix over the years. He's always provided us with a good result. Finished 5th back in 1985, then he was 2nd in 1986 and 3rd in 1987. Van der Poel just beneath us there, alongside, having a chat, in fact, it looks to me, with Rudy. Piper's come back. He's done well, Alan, to recover from that puncture. Steve Bauer is here, and he's riding much nearer the front now. Henrik Redant, I can see. And I think that's Michel Vermont setting the pace at the front. There's the world champion, Rudy Darnans. His lifestyle has changed somewhat since he won the world title. It was a surprise at the time, but if you were there watching it in Japan, it was no surprise the way he won it. He rode so well on that particular day to become world champion. And back home, because of the time difference, of course, his wife heard about it. She was in bed, and she pulled on a dressing gown and threw a party. Well, there's no peace, because as soon as that field has regrouped, there's riders now willing to keep this pace up. All of this hard work, and they don't want to allow back any stragglers from the main peloton who are still chasing hard. Well, I must say I feel sure now that the winner will come from this group. Number 45, Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle. A little bit of the dirt of Paris-Roubaix now spread across his face and over his dark legs. And an attack going down the outside of the road. And this is the PDM team, and Cordes having another go. Dutch riders do reasonably well in Paris-Roubaix, but it's the Belgian riders who hold the record. They've won this race 46 times. Dutch riders have only got a handful of victories, really, all coming late in life. 4 victories so far. The last Dutchman to win this race was Henny Kuiper in 1983. And a name we should watch out for too is the rider riding along in yellow. That's Franco Ballerini. He was frightening a few people last year with his fine end-of-season riding. Michel Vermont going out after the chase. Vermont came to the fore a few years ago now on the Isle of Wight, just off the coast of England, where he won his first professional race. And again the race going across the main autoroute between Paris and Brussels. It zigzags over it all of the time. Generally we race in a northerly direction, but we do nip around a bit from left to right to go in search of the cobblestones, because they're getting fewer and fewer, and in this department now the organisation are working very closely. In fact, there are, I think it's 15 mayors of towns who have been invited to follow Paris-Roubaix today in the official cars, so that they can get the flavour of why they should never allow this race to die. Well, let's hope that they're particularly enthused by what they're seeing, because this has been a great race, full of attacks. There's nobody at all at this stage we could call an absolute favourite to win. And quite clearly the riders themselves are fishing around here, trying to sense the strength of one another. They've slowed down again. It's an elite group. Nobody willing to move up on the outside. Adrie van der Poel having a little chat there with Gilbert. Laurent Fignon, who's had a day of slaving away bridging gaps, has at last got to the group at the front that matters and is now ready for a rest, I would suggest. Jean-Marie Wampers still in front of him. And it looks as though somebody's trying to stretch the elastic again at the front. There's Ballerini. Big man. Professional for a long time actually, Franco Ballerini, and suddenly shot to the fore last year. He put together a string of good results. Now it looks like Rudy Darlens is down there. The world champion, anxious to be seen on television for the first time this year. Van Hooijdonk hiding a bit down the peloton, and Steve Bauer knows a good wheel to follow, because there he is. He's the only one from the Motorola who has made this selection. That was to be expected. The whole team, their job today was to make sure Bauer was in a position to get to any league group. They've done their job well, and now they're all out of it by the look of it. Sean Yates was in an early attack soon after the Forest of Orenburg, but he punctured, and in fact he was very, very lucky indeed. His mechanic was knocked over by an official car, and Sean's leg got brushed by it. He's already carrying the scars of one crash this year as well. Long, thin line now. The angry race of Paris-Roubaix in a long, long, thin line. And Laurent Fignon sitting near the back. Not too many French riders in this group. Quite an abundance of Belgians though. There's one of them, Carlo Bones, give him a chance on the track at, and this looks like Redant. I think it's Redant who's having a go, or Peter de Klerk. Peter de Klerk, I think, who's gone. Should be able to recognise the difference, I suspect. One's big and one's small. They're both in the Lotto team, managed by the former top pursuiter, Jean-Luc Vandenbroek now. Started out as junior world champion of the pursuit when it was actually called the European Championship, before they actually brought about the World Junior Pursuit Championships. Anyway, it's number 86, and that makes it Hendrik Redant. And Redant riding with a lot of aggression today too. And he's thrown the gauntlet down here, Redant. He's either trying to go alone, but he's still a long way to go to Roubaix, or he's hoping a group will come up to him and he'll split this big field. Official car dropping back. It might be a number check, or it might mean he's already got himself about 20 seconds. A counter-attack going here, Van der Poel, and Fignon is trying now to end the attack of Redant. Fignon's going clear, followed by Adrie Van der Poel, and joined by Steve Bauer. Three heads of state as it were now, all classic winners in their own right, going now to try and catch up with the leader. And coming up behind there, Olaf Ludwig. Well, if it came from a sprint between the four of them, you'd put your money on Ludwig, this rapid sprinter from East Germany, still the reigning Olympic champion from Seoul. I was in Australia with Olaf Ludwig at the end of last winter, before he became a professional at the start of last year, and he crashed in the race I was watching, broke his wrist. He spoke no English, but over a week with the Australians, his English improved beyond recognition. And with a big cast on his wrist, he used to go into the bar and bang it on the bar and just simply say, beer. And when you see the size of Olaf Ludwig, you give him anything he wants. But he's developed in 1 year as a professional into a great sprinter, and the unfortunate thing is, because of politics in East Germany, it's taken him so long in life to become a professional, and he's already nearly at the end of what would be a professional's career, approaching 30 years of age now. There's the grim face of Hendrik Redant, still trying to hold them all off. "13 wins since he turned professional, Hendrik Redant, and he's now ploughing a lone trail. See, unfortunately, it's the cars ahead that cause all of the dust. Even the leader doesn't escape it. This is zone number 5, which means we're now at Giswang. We're heading up to Bourgel. A mere 1.5 kilometres of cobbles, but they're pretty bad, this little stretch. The very first Paris-Roubaix, by the way, which started in 1896. The race was created by two people from Roubaix, Théodore Vienne and Maurice Perret, and it was only disputed by 48 riders, the first Paris-Roubaix. And the reports that came back then about these roads in northern France and made a lot of riders feel they didn't want to see it again either. And since then it's been a constant battle to make sure these roads stay around. This is Wilfred Peters, a new face from the Histor team you've seen at the front. Peter de Klerk. So de Klerk here, with his teammate up front. The Lotto boys taking a little bit of control. Marc Madiot has come to the front as well. First time we've seen Madiot today. Winner of this race in 1985. There he is. And Madiot loves the cobbles. He actually comes from the north of France, but from the Brittany coastline, not from where we are now, which is a lot further up the coast. And Wilfred Peters, very solid Belgian, he's going to enjoy himself here as well. You can hear the bikes banging over the cobblestones just now. Peter de Klerk is there, this little group trying to get on terms with Hendrik Redant. This time last year, Marc Madiot was at the start of a season which brought him no victories. There was a lot of rumour during the winter he was going to retire from the sport, but he's come back riding on the RMO team. Look at this massive crowd now, and the camera, the official photographer there just on the corner. He must have got a very close up picture of Peter de Klerk there. There's Redant out on the cobblestones, heading towards the end now of zone number 5, which gives us 4 more zones to come to the finish. Still around 20 kilometers to go, but this has got to be one of the final selections now, and Redant is hanging on to that short lead, chased by 3 very, very solid riders, but only 2 will do any work because de Klerk has the man in front and he'll sit there as the policeman, and maybe if they catch Redant he'll jump them. There's still life in the group behind as well. This looks like Carlo Bowman. Oh, this is Steve Bauer going across. Bauer has realised it's now or never to cross this gap, and he is inspired today. Steve Bauer relishing the thought of getting back to grips with the leaders as they approach the Roubaix Velodrome. I must say that the finish on the Velodrome, we've returned back there as you saw last year with the finish by Steve Bauer. We popped downtown at Roubaix for a couple of years because the sponsorship was by La Redoute, a big mail order company, and we finished very near to their factory in the centre of Roubaix, but it wasn't as good as the arrival on the Velodrome. The Velodrome is packed again today, literally to capacity, just like in the good old days of track cycling. And the crowd there waiting for the arrival. Already in is the Cerco Franco-Belge, which has been won by an Englishman. I should get that in, shouldn't I? John Hughes, who has won a very, very good race today over 5 days, and the last 20 kilometres run off over this same course as we're seeing now. Redant still plugging away, still hanging on. I think his lead is around 30 seconds. We've had no confirmation of that. Won the Tour de l'Oise last year. And 12 seconds it is, so there's confirmation, and it's Madiot who's leading that little chase behind with Steve Bauer. I think Bauer's got on. We'll have a look in a minute. This group is building all of the time. Ballerini coming across there. This is a good solid move by Redant. It's Ballerini and John Tarlan. Ballerini, Tarlan, Marc Madiot. Well, yesterday walking around the streets of Compiègne, I spoke to the RMO team manager, Christian Roumeau, and he said to me, watch out for Marc tomorrow, and we all smiled. He may have the last laugh yet. Christian Roumeau, he's a very great character. He's now with the RMO team, but he was also behind Sean Kelly in his victories in Paris-Roubaix. And this is a good solid group, but can they pull back Redant? You've got to finish riders off quickly in Paris-Roubaix because you never know. But that looks like the selection, doesn't it? Look at this gap that they've built now, and Fignon has again been caught in that group. Somebody's realised it, but didn't Bauer read it well? He saw that group going, he allowed, this is Fignon. Laurent Fignon has read it wrongly. He's been chasing all day, and now he's finding himself with no friends in that big group once again. How many times do we see this with the Frenchman? We saw it in the Classics last year. He always found that people wouldn't assist him. In the Tour of Flanders last year, He was dragging them along for mile after mile. Nobody would help him, and in the end he abandoned the race 9 kilometers to go, totally fed up. And now he's missed it again. Ballerini has got to be considered now as the danger man. This will be the best shot he's ever had at winning Paris-Roubaix. He's got a good sprint, he's got the strength, he's bridged the gap. He's come across with John Tarlon. We'll go back up to the leader, Hendrik Redant here. He's riding on the grass, look, to try and keep off the cobblestones. Well, that's a dangerous place to ride, because you never know what's in the grass. At least you can see the grit and the stones and the nails and everything on the road. At least you might get some warning. But the crowd, they know about Paris-Roubaix, look. They give the riders an extra 4 inches. Well, this has got to be one of the finest sporting happenings in the world, in any sport. Bizarre as it may be, Bernard Hinault won this race back in 1981 so he could climb off his bike and tell the organisers they were animals and that this was an insult to an athlete. Well, today Bernard Hinault is part of the organising committee. Oh no, well this is a puncture. Redant has stopped and there must be right on him. I'm not even sure there was a service car with him. Well, that is incredible bad luck, but that is also Paris-Roubaix. Well, our cameras had to move away from it, which means that the riders must have been right on him. Now, I don't know if they've gone past them already, because our camera bike was just ahead of the riders. It was only about 12 seconds or so. No, here they are. So they're going through, and the neutral service was with Redant, and Redant is away again. At least he'll get back into this lead group. But that is terrible. Whether he would have won from that position now, we're never going to know, are we? Hendrik Redant will go down in history, just another name and number of a man who punctured, went in with a shout of winning Paris-Roubaix. Off that stretch of cobblestones at at Bourgel, sorry, we're leaving Bourgel now, end of number 5. So that is a great, great shame. Now Redant has got to do it all again, but not from the front, from the back. You see the motorbikes there carrying spare wheels. They try to give it a rider on the attack every chance at least. Here's our cameraman, he's getting back into the act again now. You have to get out of the way rather quickly there. So all of a sudden now Redant is having to use his energy here to get back to a lead group when he was working very, very well to stay. There's the head of Albert Bouvet, technical director of the Tour de France, coming through the car. He's seen 1 or 2 great Paris-Roubaix. He's the man responsible for the course, so if Hendrik wants to give him one, that's the place to do it. But Bouvet just loves this race. He goes in search of the roads, he takes advice from people, and then he goes and looks at the course and decides on it. And then all he wants to see is a good competition, and it's been a great race today. It's still in total doubt here. Attack after attack. I do feel though that we've seen the last of the main field. Fignon is still chasing to the best of my knowledge, but we're looking at a very select group of 6 riders. Redant has come back. It's been a bit of a struggle. Peter de Klerk has sat at the back, faithfully waiting for him to return. Not finding the strength to drop off and help him back on though, has he? So we have Ballerini in this front group. Steve Bauer has made the selection. A long, long way down the wide open roads now, just south of the Belgian borders. This is far more typically Belgian countryside now than French. It used to be a mining area, the mines closing down, and it's now becoming more agriculture, as you can see. No hedges. When the wind blows, it's vicious. When the rain comes, it's vicious. Today it's reasonably warm and extremely dusty. Roger de Vlaming proved to be a great winner in his time. He won in every type of condition: the mud, the sun, the dust. Sorry about a little bit of picture breakup. It's coming from our links up to the helicopters when it passes over a tree or something like that to interfere. And this looks as though there's a Bowers on the chase again here now. This is Ballerini as well. This is Marc Magnio, I think, in that group. They seem to have split up here. And one rider has gone clear. No, and still chasing. So we've gone back to the lead group now, and it looks as though we've still got riders on the attack on another stretch of cobblestones. This will be zone number 3, I think, between Ferme de Craplin and Campin-en-Pelève. Still with the lead group, so it wasn't. It looked as though it was Bauer who was chasing that group and driving it very, very quickly indeed. Bauer has got to get up here, of course. To zone number 3 it is, taking us up to the 248th kilometre. Inside 20 to go. John Tarlin, as big as he is, riding the cobblestones quite calmly at the back. But this group splitting up again. It's Peter de Klerk who's letting the door open a little bit. Tarlin's realised it and rapidly goes through on the inside, takes the back wheel. Now we're looking here at Marc Sergent. The one-day fields will be his in a classic race. We always talk about him in Belgium as being a pre-race favourite. He always finishes in the first 10. He doesn't quite make it number 1. This is Verdant here. Each rider, a low riding in the line, trying desperately to see his own piece of road just in case the hole comes that nobody tells him about. The wheel is smashed and you're out of the race. The helicopter also, of course, with its rotor blade, is not helping with the dust down here. This is the most traffic you'll see on these roads for another 12 months. You probably could come down here any day other than today and you wouldn't see anybody at all. Except last week when all of the teams come out in the formations. They train usually over the last 150 kilometres, trying to memorise in many ways the bad stretches of cobblestones, where the holes are, because the best way to do that is to ride the course. You only go down them once before you remember where they are next time. Still these riders consistent. Verdant now, he's lost a little bit of his firepower. He's hanging just off the back of this group. He's not feeling as happy. Whether he would have won, I don't know, but he had the lead. Fate's certainly not shining on him. And Eddie Plankett also out of the hunt now, by the way. 40 kilometres to go. We saw him have that bit of a problem. Well, since then he's had a puncture and he's now quite a way back. Exit of zone 3 at Campin-en-Pelève. Just 2 long stretches to come at 6 kilometres of cobblestones left before the finish in Roubaix. Still Marc Sergent. He's in a lone chase here. And not too far behind either. Good inspired chase by the Panasonic rider. There's the remnants of that leading group. But it looks as though Steve Bauer may have misjudged this, because he's tried to get across the gap and he hasn't made it. And that group, although only around 35 seconds in front, it could be enough. There's Rudy Darnans. Fignon now sitting again at the back of this group. So too Jacques Hanegraaff there. Fignon was stretching his back. He looks like a man who's become a little bit disenchanted now with Paris-Roubaix today. There still really is nothing in it. Marc Sergent chasing alone at 23 seconds behind the Madio group. Coming down now to the last couple of stretches of pavé before the finish in Roubaix. Marc Sergent, I say, he's a man of near misses, although he has been the amateur and professional champion of Belgium. His best finish in this race was 5th back in 1988. That was that year that I was telling you about earlier, when Dirk de Mol was the surprise winner with that long escape with Thomas Wegmuller. Thomas the Tank, as they call him. And there are the 6 escapers. And what a group it is too. And Steve Bauer is in that group, more than 23 seconds back at the moment. So he's going to have to make some superhuman effort now to contact these leaders. They're not waiting for anybody. The favourites had come to the front all day. They've been knocked out. They've gone to the back. And now we're left with quite a varied bunch of riders here. Hendrik Redant struggling now at the back of the group all of the time. This is a particularly nasty stretch of cobblestones, this one. I want to remember Jonathan Bowyer crashing on these cobblestones quite spectacularly on the left-hand bend. 2:49 the start, 2:52 kilometres the finish, and this is zone 2 with one more zone to come, but the zone to come is made up into 4 sections, in fact, stretching around 3 kilometres. Ballerini is now got to be seen as the man that they've got to get rid of in this group. There's Fignon still back in the chase group, just following the wheels now rather than driving the train too. It's a long group. I don't know how many riders in it, but it's got to be 20 or 30 riders. Jean-Marie Wampers, previous winner 2 years ago, 5th last year. Michel Vermotte. These are the riders who have played their part in shaping Paris-Roubaix today, but now they are in the chase group. Still the crowd enormous. Let's go back up to the leaders. Redant dangling off the back. And not enjoying this stretch of cobblestones at all. Grass growing down the middle. He's losing ground, if anything. You can try as hard as you like, you bounce your way, and then you just watch riders ride away from you in the front. It's so exasperating. You're actually trying all that you can possibly do, and yet riders in front are still moving ahead of you. So Fignon's found himself back at the front of that chase group here. Oh no, he hasn't. He's found himself slightly off the back of it, because Wampers is also going clear now. And that's a very, very nasty corner when it's full of water, but not so today, just dust. Everybody hugging the left of the road here. This is back to the leaders now. This is Ballerini, and it looks as though there's been an attack here. Ballerini and John Tarlin are the 2 riders here at this group. We've gone back up, and we've missed, unfortunately, our French cameras have missed this breakaway. But a rider has jumped, and it must have been soon out of that far bend we saw. We're coming towards the end of zone number 2. Tarlin chasing. Ballerini is here. Well, we're off zone 2 now. The fact our cameraman is with the 2 leaders. No, he isn't. That's Wilfred Peters who's come through. I was about to say that it looks as though the group had split up, and it certainly has. There's one rider in the lead, and you know, I think it's got to be Marc Madiot who's gone ahead, because Ballerini is chasing. Sergent is still off the back of this group. It is indeed Madiot. So Marc Madiot has attacked in exactly the same place where he attacked and won this race back in 1985. Well, I keep thinking now about the conversation with Christian Remer, who said that watch out for Marc today. He's got good form. He gave us some indication in last week's Tour of Flanders, in fact. He was in the lead group there, working hard in the break. Well, this is his 10th Paris-Roubaix, Madiot. He's still around 10 kilometres to go to the finish. It's quite possible now, because the whole field is spread-eagled over the road behind him. The motorcycles have fought their way through to get the one shot that could be of the winner today, as Madiot concentrates now on the effort. And let's hope he doesn't suffer the same fate as Hendrik Redant did a little bit earlier. That's Ballerini who's got away now. He's blocked a little bit, Ballerini, by John Tarlin on the cobbles. I think, in fact, it must have been Tarlin who was on the wheel of Madiot when he attacked. And there's Tarlin now, being passed by Ballerini. But Ballerini is still the danger man. If Ballerini crosses that gap, he'll take care of Madiot, I'm sure of that. There's poor old Redant hanging on in there just off the back of this breakaway. His legs now have lost the aggression they had earlier. A penchant for Paris-Roubaix, Marc Madiot. Before turning pro in 1980, he won this race as an amateur as well. In 1979, then he was the last French winner in 1985. And the 10th time he's attacked the pavé, not including his amateur victory, by the way. Otherwise, he's probably 11th, and I would think possibly the 12th, because I'm sure he will have ridden the amateur race on 2 occasions before turning professional. And the RMO team will come from Grenoble, and Madio joining them this year. Must now be getting pretty excited about this. The danger man is Ballerini, as far as I know, still clear. There he is. But he's losing ground. I think he's actually losing ground here, Ballerini. Well, Franco Ballerini was always the rider I felt could have won this race. He's been outwitted by Madio, who's attacked on the cobbles at exactly the same point he did in 1985. One of only 3 Frenchmen to win this race since 1956. Louis Mbobé, I remember the late Louis Mbobé, the great Frenchman from Brittany. He was on the winner's podium, congratulating Bernardino back in 1981. Since then, sadly, Lewison has passed on. And Madio came along in 85 and won again. And the race commissaires up there trying to push all the motorbikes out of the way and clear the way for Madio. They're acting as a very nice carrot for him nonetheless. He's off that stretch of cobblestones. Just one stretch of cobblestones to come now for Madio. His tail's up, his nose is in the air. He must be able to smell the velodrome. I think he afforded himself a little look over his shoulder there, but we couldn't see it behind the trees. And again we zigzag over the autoroute between Brussels and Paris. Well, this is going to be a great confidence booster this early in the season for Marc. No wins at all last year. In fact, he's only won 3 races since 1988. Sixth in Paris-Roubaix in 1989. He's always ridden well in this race, though. Or at least he's always tried to ride well in this race. Once or twice he's been caught out with bad luck, but then who hasn't? I was talking to Rolf Sorensen earlier today, who's leading in the World Cup competition, the Great Dane, and he said he's ridden this race 3 times. He's never got to Roubaix yet. Well, let's hope he's having better luck today. He certainly has not been seen throughout the day up amongst the leaders, so he's obviously having a rough time of it. But he's got his season off to a great start, with 2nd in Milan-San Remo behind Claudio Chiappucci, and 3rd behind Edwig van Hooijdonk in the Tour of Flanders, to give him the lead in the World Cup. And none of the riders up here are going to affect that lead in the World Cup series. That's the series that goes throughout the season and goes around the world. Indeed. We're heading up now towards the outskirts of Roubaix. It's a very confusing little area of France. I guarantee anybody that comes to visit it will get lost. The signage isn't what it might be. And in this area of Roubaix and Lille, on the borders of Belgium, it is very easy to get lost. But not for the riders on the race route. The crowd telling us exactly which way they're going next. And they're seeing a Frenchman, a very rare sight too, one has to say, of a Frenchman heading the race down towards the velodrome in Roubaix. Marc Madio, 1 stretch of cobble still to come, or 1 zone of cobble still to come at least. They break up and they go smooth and they break up again. And his lead at the moment, I think, on Ballerini is about 17 seconds. Ballerini doesn't seem to be closing up. There was a moment when he did appear to be catching. Now he seems to be in a stalemate. Final drink, is it? No, a little bit left for the finish. Well, this is turning out to be a great pursuit match now between Marc Madio and Franco Ballerini. "25 seconds the gap. So it has gone back a little bit. Ballerini not making the progress now. Well, Franco Ballerini, who's chasing, turned professional only in 1986. But he really was one of those just solid professional riders we didn't hear too much of until last year. And he popped up last year with 5th in the Amstel Gold Race, which comes after Paris-Roubaix, by the way. 3rd in Ghent-Wevelgem. 10th in the Tour de France. 19th in Paris-Roubaix last year, 47th in the World Championship, and then he really got it right. He won Paris-Brussels, and then he won the Grand Prix des Amériques in Montreal. finishing 4th overall in the World Cup Series. So Ballerini has come out with the same confidence this year, but he's misread this, or he's had a bit of bad luck on that Zone 2 pavé. I've seen riders stopped at this level crossing over the years too. In fact, I've been among them when all the following cars have been stopped and the race has come around us. When that happens, by the way, the riders have the advantage. The official cars have to go behind, and that usually causes a different type of chaos. Well, the gap is opening up. 28 seconds now between Madio and Ballerini. Marc Madio saw his national championship pass over to the shoulders of his brother Yvon. That was in 1987, and in 1988 Yvon won the title. Marc finished second. Two famous cycling. It looks like Ballerini has had enough of this chase. He's just checking to see what's happening behind. Well, we don't know anymore quite what is happening behind. There's the team car of Madio going forward. That's confirmed a half-minute gap. And there's the shot now of Madio approaching the last stretch of cobblestones. Ballerini looks as though he's feeling now that he's not going to cross the gap, and he doesn't quite know whether to continue or to wait for the chase behind. And unfortunately, we don't know quite what is happening to that chase behind. We did know that Marc Sergeant was chasing, and as far as we know, the rest of the breakaway is still there. Peter de Klerk, Hendrik Redant are still there, Johnny Tarlen and Wilfred Peters. And there's the word for Marc, the team car having come right through the leading groups, so he'll be telling them exactly now his advantage, and it's going to be rather good news, I think. Just on half a minute back to Franco Ballerini, who is not progressing forward, and it seems as though he's not being caught either. What an interesting Paris-Roubaix this has turned out to be, and what a great finish it will be for the French. They don't often rush into the press room at night at the end of Paris-Roubaix to write about how the French did it, but it could well be the case this time. 38 seconds now, Madio over Ballerini. Seen a lot of lone riders come clear here. I remember the year that Van der Arden won in 1987. He looked like he'd come straight out of a coal mine in the mud, but he went. This is the view at the finishing line now, and the French in the stadium at Roubaix are seeing the white jersey of Marc Madio clattering over the final stretch of cobblestones, heading towards them at a terrific pace. And that was Daniel Manjas telling them that at 251 kilometres the race situation, and here it is, Marc Madio now racing towards Roubaix with a lead of about 40 seconds. He's chosen the only stretch of smooth road there is. He's had to cross it there, but he's grabbed it again on the far side of the road. The major challenge of Paris-Roubaix is now behind. Ballerini entering the final zone of cobbles. 40 seconds down. And this race losing none of its magic. If anything, it's becoming more and more popular as the years unfold. This is the 89th Paris-Roubaix that we've had. And 48 seconds, Madio surely now is going to win Paris-Roubaix for the second time. Well, if he does that, we have to go back a long time. Previous winner Bernard Hinault, and Hinault of course is on the race as one of the technical directors watching. I suspect he's going through the feeling of every bounce on the cobblestones along with Marc Madio. Still pedalling a heavy gear over the cobblestones. They say that's the way to ride the cobbles. Use the big gears and go as fast as you can. It's a long way down this road now, down the cobbles. One helicopter off in search of the second man. He's dropped right back. There he is. And looking behind him, it could well be that Ballerini has done enough to take second place at least. He's still looking over his shoulder, but he won't see anybody. We can have a look from the helicopter. It's Ballerini in second place. And a long way back to what is a reasonably sized group there. And Redant still sitting at the back. Well, we've got Marc Sergeant has crossed the gap. There's Sergeant. He's up now with Johnny Tarlen, Peter de Klerk, Wilfred Peters and Redant. So those are the riders in the lead group, and let's look a little bit further back. No, we're not going to. Right, we'll go back up to the leader. So Marc Sergeant has done a great ride to cross the gap, and again this unlucky Belgian has found that there's already somebody flown at the front, and it's Marc Madio. And I don't think they're going to pick up Franco Ballerini either, because he looks to have about 15-20 seconds, maybe more than that, ahead of that chase group. And Marc Madio, professional since 1980, and 1991 looks like being a vintage year for him. "31 years of age, Marc. Maybe 32 in about 10 days' time." It's when you get around this age, professional riders continually ask themselves, should I go out for another year, or is it too late now? And Marc Madio asked himself this very question during the winter, whether to ride again or not. And he's come out and he's taken on the one race he's always had success in, and now it looks like he's going to get it again. Whole body doing the work on that bicycle now, the shoulders bobbing up and down, ungainly style. Still trying desperately to keep that big gear churning over the bad roads. He knows now, once he's off these cobblestones, it's through the back streets of Roubaix, and then that marvellous long straight down the boulevard, which turns you right into the stadium, and then you will see the chicken skin as he goes into the stadium to what I'm sure will be an absolutely enormous cheer, because with technology improving all of the time, we've moved on 6 years since his last victory, and now you've seen that big television screen waiting in the finishing area. The crowd have followed everything we have seen here today on this video, the same down at the finishing line on this giant television screen. So they will have appreciated all of the way the ride by Madio, and indeed the chase by Franco Ballerini, who must be kicking himself here. He must be feeling he's lost his best chance of victory ever in Paris-Roubaix. Ballerini developing into a top bike rider last year and continuing that trend this season. Until he put together such great results last year. His previous best classic result was a 10th place in the Tour of Lombardy. Even the police, you see, are cheering on the French rider in the lead, Marc Madio. Everybody here at last realising this is not going to be one of victory, or at least victory number 47 for a Belgian in their race. It's going to be hopefully victory number 27 for a Frenchman. The closer Madio gets to the finish, the more he's going to say to himself, there's nobody going to catch me now, nobody. There'll be some celebrations in the RMO camp tonight if they win this classic, the great monument of the sport. And just look at this appreciative crowd here. They've watched it on television, they'll have listened to it on the radio, they'll have run out their houses knowing the riders were close, and they'll know who he is. Madio, over his 11 years as a pro, I make it, he's won about 26 races, so he's not a prolific winner, but he picks out some good ones, doesn't he? He finished 8th in the Tour de France, by the way, going back a little ways now, 1983. He's been the champion of France, he won that in 1987, that was probably one of his best seasons. He's had a 3rd place in Paris-Nice. He's finished in recent years, since his victory in 1985 in Paris-Roubaix, he took a 6th place in 1989. But now he's going to go back onto the winners' podium at the finish, and he's going to have a matching pair of cobblestones by the end of the day. He won one in 85 because the winner receives this beautiful cobblestone which will be on the other end of his sideboard tonight. He'll have one at each end now, not to mention the 150,000 French francs as winner of this race. It was 1986, the first year that the race left the Roubaix velodrome for the first time since the First World War, and Sean Kelly was the winner then, and the big prize, which went up from about $1,500 to this $20,000 odd. But now we're back to the velodrome last year, and it will certainly pay justice now to Marc Madiot, because as one, that crowd will stand and salute the Frenchman. The back streets of Roubaix and the crowd continue to cheer him along. Oh, and dear me, Ballerini has either been surrendered or he's been caught. Wilfred Peters has picked him up certainly, and John Tarlin. No sign of Redant or Peter de Klerk there, but the advance group of that breakaway has got across to Ballerini, so he's lost his chance unless he can come good in the sprint, but he can handle himself in the sprint finish. It just depends how much energy he's given away now. But over this last little bit of uneven road around the back streets of Roubaix now, and then Marc Madiot will be on the boulevard heading down towards the finish. The Avenue Fleming is what he's looking for. Wilfred Peters here. Madiot now a couple of kilometres, no more than that, from the finish. Still, he's looking a very tired man indeed now, but he'll be elated in a few minutes' time. There's nobody going to catch him. And whenever he feels tired, the crowd will give him a lift. That's the end of the cobblestones in this year's Paris-Roubaix now, all 56.8 kilometres of them. There's the odd tram line, just as a reminder. But now he's heading down to the finish. The Avenue Fleming, a long stretch of dual carriageway outside of the velodrome. Then the sweep into the stadium. And then Paris-Roubaix over for the 79th time. And for only the 28th time, we're going to have a French winner. 27th time we'll have a French winner. Sorry about that. 1 kilometre to go for Marc Madiot. Repeating his victory and joining an elite list of riders who have won this race at least twice. Men like Eddy Merckx, Francesco Moser, Octave Lapitte. And today the crowds on this route have been as big as ever I've seen them. This is the scrap behind. Ballerini still working hard. Wilfred Peters, who's done extremely well. He finished 39th in Paris-Roubaix last year. They're off the cobblestones now, but too far behind, that's for sure. We go back to the leaders. They've got to be 45 seconds down now, I would think. 600 metres possibly towards the finish. We'll be sweeping onto the boulevard very, very shortly. And then it's down to the entrance of the velodrome and wait for the cheers. There's the avenue. And this is the approach that every rider likes to be in the lead in Paris-Roubaix. If you're alone in the lead right now, it must be a marvellous feeling for Marc Madiot. He's just making sure nobody's creeping up on him. He's now taking time to look around, preparing himself for what will be a royal welcome in the velodrome at Roubaix. And in the great tradition of this race, a rider comes home alone, and I'm going to now just let you hear the cheers. This is the turn he's waiting for when he'll go onto the velodrome, Marc Madiot. And that says it all. A Frenchman in France on the velodrome of Roubaix, bringing to a close the greatest classic of them all. And just the formality now of 1.5 laps of the Roubaix velodrome. No millimetre in it this time. And one has to say, no Steve Bauer or Eddie Plankett either. And there's the fist being shaken in pleasure at the crowd and at the television and press who are commentating from that point. And it looks as though Madio will encircle the stadium before the sprint for second place. He's going to go across the line indeed. The second time he's won Paris-Roubaix as a professional. He's done it before also as an amateur. And there are very few riders in the world can boast 3 victories in Paris-Roubaix. And now comes the moment of the jersey straightening, possibly the 2-arm salute. Marc Madio is back in the big time. And a great ride, and here's the chase, and this group has got rather big all of a sudden. This is Jean-Claude Collotti leading them out. He's come from nowhere. Ballerini is up there as well. Wilfred Peters and Steve Bauer has latched onto this. 5 men down. Bauer must have caught this group in the last kilometre. We never knew that Bauer was chasing. He was on one of our pictures, and Bauer has got up for this group. Well, a second place for Steve Bauer wouldn't be a bad defence, would it? Jean-Claude Collotti, the French sprinter, leading them out. Ballerini in second place at the moment. It looks as though we've got Wilfred Peters there in third place. Steve Bauer going high on the banking. Bauer going high. Carlo Bowman's taking him on. Bauer on the shoulder now of Ballerini as Jean-Claude Collotti. Bauer has gone into the slipstream of Ballerini. So Collotti now coming round towards the finish. Another Frenchman in the fight yet again. Bauer poised to jump. Bauer goes now. A couple of lap riders on the inside who are a lap behind them. As they come onto the line now, Jean-Claude Collotti. Bauer's on the left, Bowman's on the right, and Collotti takes it. That is a French 1-2, and that's not been done since the Pelissier brothers did that back in 1921. And this is the winner, Marc Madio of France, Jean-Claude Collotti in second place, and third is the Belgian rider on the far right of our picture, Carlo Bowmans, and Steve Bauer. What a superb ride by Steve, contacting this group almost in the velodrome and getting the legs to get up for fourth place for the Motorola team. Let's have a look at that finish again. Jean-Claude Collotti, inside on the camera here, Steve Bauer, and right on the outside, Carlo Bowmans. Take away Jean-Claude Collotti, it's almost the same sprint finish as last year between Bauer and a Belgian. And so this is Marc Madio saying he's very content, I'm sure he is, with his victory today as he goes on to the podium to receive the giant cobblestone, and I hope he's got the strength to pick it up. But France are back on top of the world in their own classic race. They've taken 1-2, and that's never been done since 1921. And now the tired faces of the rest of the riders. Eddie Plankett, who says, I was really strong today and I punctured at 40 kilometres out. Charlie Motte, he'll be happy his teammate has won at least. And this is the scene now in the shower area, and the sad faces. Sean Yates from Motorola, almost knocked down by an official car. And this is the nicest part of Paris-Roubaix, believe me. It's the time when the warm water sprays off the dust. Rudy Darlens, champion of the world, with Stefan van Leer, a colleague of mine from Belgium, and Eddie Plankett. The skies didn't smile on him today, he punctured, but Steve Bauer, he put up a brilliant defence, and he should be extremely content with that break today towards the end.
I think I rode well, and tactically Madio, he made a good attack. He made a good attack at the right time, and everybody kind of sat looking at each other, and a couple more guys went, and I think it's looking a little more for the teams that had more riders to control that attack, like Panasonic and PDM had a few guys, but I missed a good one. And
where did you contact that chase group?
The velodrome there.
On the velodrome?
Yeah, so I was working with Duclos LaSalle and Vanderpool and a few others, and I got away from them with Sargent and Bowmans, and we just caught them just coming into the velodrome. So I did a lot of work to catch, and for the sprint my legs were a little bit dead, but I was happy to get in there for the second place anyway.
Sure, you must feel pretty good really, because it's a nice sign now the form is coming.
Yeah, considering last week Tour of Flanders I was nowhere, it's just no power, and I think what I said before, I'd overtrained a little bit before that race, so now I'm back on track.
What about the team? Were they able to help you out? Did you need them?
The team were riding well into the first sectors of Pavé. They helped me out a lot to get in front. And Sean Yates and Andy Bishop were, in the race the longest, and they were helping me out, up into the final. So I think things went okay.
So for Steve Bauer, he'll live to fight another day, and one day everybody feels he will win Paris-Roubaix. But for today, it's Marc Madiot with his second cobblestone in 6 years. And the proudest moment of his career, I would suspect. It's proved to him he's not too old yet to beat the best riders in the world. Jean-Marie Leblanc very happy in the background, Bernard Hinault on the far right, the two directors of the Tour de France. And of course, 5 times winner, world champion, and above all, the only other Frenchman in recent years to have won Paris-Roubaix apart from Marc Madiot. And Madiot today also the king of the pavé. These are the points scored. First 3 riders coming off each stretch of pavé on 22 zones getting points. Madiot gets 25, Colotti 22, Bowman's 20. Steve Bauer finishes 4th in that competition as well today. So the result, Marc Madiot, 266 kilometres in 7 hours, 8 minutes and 19 seconds. That's an average speed of almost 24 miles an hour. Second, Jean-Claude Colotti, also of France. Third, the Belgian Carlo Bowmans. Fourth, Steve Bauer of Canada. In 5th place was Franco Ballerini of Italy, and 6th, Wilfred Peters of Belgium. 10th, by the way, was Hendrik Redant, and Greg LeMond of the United States finished in 55th position and proclaimed his forks were a success. It's been a great Paris-Roubaix. It's been held in the great tradition of this race, and I hope you've enjoyed following the cobblestones of northern France with me. But until the next time now, it's goodbye.